Morning, everybody, and welcome to the Social Housing Roundtable. Lovely to see so many of you with us already, and lovely to see so many people saying hello, etc. in the chat. Please feel free to engage, dive in, etc. I'm just going to make sure we're all kicking off and that a few people are jumping in last minute, so I'm going to let everyone in now. But yeah, a massive welcome to you all, especially the week before the Housing Community Summit, which is obviously one of the key themes we're going to be discussing today. My name's Matt Baird. I've been running this platform now for the last 4 to 5 years, really heavily over the last 4 years. We've been meeting every single Tuesday at 11 o'clock. So if you are new, a massive welcome to you. This is episode 193, I'm reliably informed. So we're definitely on that countdown to our 200th episode as well. And a quick thank you to our sponsors. We are sponsored through 2025 by Alertical and CMSG. Without them, this wouldn't be able to be free and accessible to everybody. So thank you to those who have been able to sponsor, but also thank you to everyone who uses us for our recruitment services. It is that literally keeps this running and available for all. So if you are ever looking for recruitment support, please do reach out. So on to today. We're delighted today to welcome Alexandra Gibson and Simon Nunn. Alexandra is from the Chartered Institute of Housing. Simon is from the National Housing Federation, two businesses which couldn't do very quick, easy names, it turns out, with the way I'm stumbling over them this morning, so apologies for that. But they're both here today to talk on a topic that I'm really delighted we've been able to bring about last minute. I will say that this was kind of thrust upon the pair of them very, very last minute. So the fact they've dived on is we're hugely grateful for. But we wanted to get together today to discuss joining forces to boost community and collaboration. We're going to do a bit of a different way of doing it today, rather than kind of sit here and have Alexandra and Simon kind of present. We're going to do a bit more of an open Q&A before moving over to a broader to the broader forum. So you'll all be able to kind of ask questions, share your thoughts, share your insight. We've got a few things I'm going to run through with Simon and Alexandra, so during that, please do feel free to put questions, thoughts, ideas in the chat box. But from then, as I say, we will move into a more open discussion with you all. So I'm going to pass across to Simon and Alexandra to do intros first. So Simon, if I go to you to introduce yourself and your role at the NHF, that would be fantastic.
Hi Matt, hi everyone, good to see you. Simon Nunn, I'm Executive Director for Member Services at the National Housing Federation, which means that ultimately under me comes all of our conferences and events, so I have executive responsibility for that at the NHF.
Fantastic. And Alexandra?
Hello everyone, I'm Alex. I'm the Events Content and Production Manager for the Chartered Institute of Housing. So much like Simon, all of our events fall under me in terms of the programs that we put together and the speakers and the content. And I am the current lead for the Housing and Practice programme. I just want to give a little shout out to Sylvia Corradini, who leads on Housing in Focus at the National Housing Federation. But she said that she definitely didn't want to do any public speaking today, so I'll do it for her. And I won't hold this against you, Matt, just bearing in mind how busy I am. But no, it's lovely to be here today, and it's lovely to see so many people joining in as well.
Oh, I completely can acknowledge the fact that I kind of last second went, hey, so Alex and I'm on the steering committee for the summit, for the housing in practice arm, and said, don't suppose you fancy coming on and talking about the summit? She's like, only if I can get the NatFed to come along too. So Simon got roped in as well. So delighted that you both could join us. So I'm going to kind of, as I say, kick off with a little bit of a kind of open Q&A. So in terms of I guess how this whole thing came about, how the summit started, obviously we had a number of different programs through the year. The National Housing Federation has its own conferences and sessions. The Chartered Institute of Housing has its own sessions. But in terms of Simon, how did you, because I understand kind of from my understanding anyway, yourself and Gavin kind of came together to talk about bringing something collaborative. So could you kind of share a bit about the background to the summit, how it's come about and where we are now?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as you said, in the past, there were two big national housing conferences. There was the CIH badged event in Manchester, and then we had our separate summit. And our members, our housing association members, had been saying to me for years, why don't you and the CIH come together and do a single national event for housing? And the opportunity came up when the existing contract that the CIH had around the Manchester event came up. So the opportunity then came up for us to have some proper discussions about actually doing that. I think, Kate Henderson, my boss, the chief exec of the NHF, and Gavin at the CIH, they have a collaborative style as leaders. They were both keen that we collaborate. And certainly it's something that I have wanted to do for a long time. And I've known Gavin for a long time. So I think, if we're talking about collaboration, particularly when you've got two organisations collaborating, an absolute precondition of effective collaboration is trust. And I think, and there was that level of trust between, I think, the leadership teams between the two organisations, and that enabled us really to sit down and say, well, how are we going to do this? So it was a big leap of faith, the first joint community summit. Two very separate organisations with separate drivers, different financial drivers, different boards with different personalities, coming together to do a big flagship event like this, all sorts of potential sort of pitfalls. And I think, what we agreed at the start was, look, let's not sweat the small stuff. Let's just keep that vision in mind of saying that, we all agree that it would be fantastic to have a single national housing event. And let's not worry too much about the details in year one. Let's just keep eye on the big prize. We can talk about those other things if it's a big success going forward, and that's what we did. But full credit to our events teams. I think it's incredibly hard with a huge project like this, not having a single leadership structure in charge of it, having these tool structures makes it hard, really stressful at times, and kind of difficult. And I think Alex from the CIH and her colleagues at the CIH and our events team, I think they've really worked together well to deliver on that vision.
They certainly have, and I had a very brief moment once where I think the CIH, there was an event going on. I offered to kind of offer some help. I mean, you're behind the scenes and can see the amount that goes into just running, not just creating the event and setting up, but actually during the coordination of the day, and the amount of chaos behind the scenes. If anyone ever gets an idea of the WhatsApp group that goes on trying to coordinate it, kudos to anyone who works in those kind of events, because it's certainly a mammoth task. But the last year I felt was superb. In terms of, I guess, last year, then, as you say, it's the first year that the two businesses have come together. The first time that something like this had really been seen in the housing space. What benefits did you feel, Simon, and then I'll come to yourself, Alex, afterwards. What benefits did you really feel it provided, not just to obviously those who were attending, but to colleagues, to peers in the sector, and to tenants more broadly?
Well, we each bring our different skills and expertise to the table, and I think that's the benefit that it brings. CIH is a professional body. It has a really strong track record in education and training, but also its own sort of portfolio of events. So absolutely brilliantly well placed to bring all that practitioner side to the table, and actually to make the event something that, if you're a housing practitioner, you can go along to and it be part of your sort of growth and education, and a really important experience. Whilst at the same time, we have a track record of running some very sort of high profile political events. Our focus at the NHF is very much on that kind of national influencing and political side of things. So bringing together those two things under one roof, you do start to create something. People have talked about housing festivals for a long time. It became a real cliche, didn't it? Someone would go along to Glastonbury Festival and they would say, "Oh, wouldn't it be great if we could, call our event a festival?" And it being a bit like that. But I don't think any of them really kind of achieved that. But I think hopefully the summit, starts to move towards that, just because there are so many stages and so many different things you can dip into and dip out of, and so many areas that you can go and learn from. So yes, I think bringing that expertise together from each organisation, as I say, it was a leap of faith. In theory, we thought it worked really well, but the feedback from delegates at the event has proved that they really enjoyed it and it did work. And obviously this year it's going to be even bigger and even better.
And Alex, same kind of thoughts to you in terms of those benefits you found from bringing those two together, particularly obviously in your role both with the CIH and in the event space.
Yeah, I mean, I know we talk about the scale of this event, but I think it's more the nature of it for me as well. I think the real benefit of joining forces with the National Housing Federation is that because of who we are, and not for profits, like the focus isn't just on the size the event, but it's on the quality of the content and the connections that and we can output. So it's all about the people and the meaningful conversations that we're having, and we're building new relationships now with more people than ever in the sector as well, and that just helps us all to sort of support our members from a CIH perspective and from an NHF's perspective, but also that then in turn helps us sort of achieve the targets that we're setting ourselves. And I'm not just talking about the big ambitious targets that government have set, but working better with tenants, because tenants are our leaders, I believe. And the more we work with tenants, the more we get them involved in our conferences, because I'll be honest, I think historically conferences really haven't been very inclusive of tenants. And I've got this vision now at CIH and with the NHF, especially for the summit, in getting more and more tenants involved, because they are the people who have the expertise and they can lead us as well to be better housing professionals. So I think having the professionalisation agenda blended with the influence of the National Housing Federation it's a win-win, really.
And certainly you saw that last year. It was, I think we had more tenant speaking panels than I'd seen before at a conference last year, and that's being exacerbated even more this year. We're beating those targets all the time, which is fantastic. I mean, Alex, just on that, in terms of how is the summit put together? Obviously, I know my role in terms of the steering committee, but there's so much that goes into trying to bring something like this together. We're talking today around collaboration and joining forces to boost not just collaboration but community. How is that whole thing put together from the background to make sure that it is collaborative and community based as possible?
Yeah, I mean, if I speak from a program perspective to start with, I mean, we start by developing this with our leadership teams and board members, and across everybody who's delivering services, from those who are receiving services. So with the program, we aim to better equip people to do their jobs and champion best practice. So to start with, what we've got to do is assemble a group of advisory panel members, as yourself, Matt, you are one of them, because you've got such a broad range of networks and knowledge of the sector. But we need to look at what overarching themes we want to cover. And this year we applied to the job roles of people who we'd approach. So in practice, we have obviously tenant representation first and foremost on the advisory panel. But then I went out to look for housing officers and neighbourhood managers who would fit the housing management and engagement side of stuff at the summit. We needed representation from asset managers and repairs and maintenance staff, because we've got a broad overarching theme there of assets and development. Technology specialists and people who can give us the knowledge and the skills we need to even start to understand artificial intelligence from a housing perspective, because that's not going anywhere. That's something we're all going to have to grasp. So we needed somebody on the panel who could advise us on that, and sustainability colleagues as well, just for the net zero homes theatre. So we're a relatively small team at CIH, but we aim to speak to as many members and regional groups in the initial design of the content to understand sort of what issues people are facing, but also what successes they can come and share with one another as well, because we know we have challenges, but we also want to hear about the good stuff as well. I work very closely with our policy team, and I know that Sylvia does the same, who help advise us on content as well. But the true feedback we get, especially from a CIH side, is from our members. After that, still speaking about the programme, we'll put out a call for speakers, and basically then individuals or organisations as a whole can put a submission in to speak on a particular topic. So this is helpful because I think this ensures transparency. So it's not kind of me just going, oh, he was a good speaker at one time, let's have him again. This is giving people a chance to actually put themselves forward. They might not have spoken before, to say, actually, I quite fancy my first go public speaking. I've got a good story to tell. But I'm sure there'll be quite a few people on here as well today that have seen it. Sometimes I just put a call out on social media because honestly, I think it's a powerful thing. And it gives people a chance to, if they've missed the deadline, or if they weren't sure how to submit an application, it gives them a chance to get in touch with me and say, actually, I'd quite like to speak at this summit on a particular area, whether it be a tenant or a finance officer, you name it, that kind of thing. But I think it's important as well to mention that the summit's more than just the programme. So it's a year-long thing. We're working behind the scenes all the time, and we've got a team that's dedicated to the exhibition and the operations and logistics of the event. So they're always working hard as well to ensure it's not just another trade show, it's so that you have a really good experience. So I think this year, some of the main things that we've been looking at as well, especially in the exhibition space, and a bit like what Simon said about it, having a bit of a festival feel, but more of an immersive learning experience, is that we've done things like you've got a play on what you might find in a community. So there's a library lounge, which is home to 12 exhibitors this year who are launching books, signing books, various things like that. There's a stakeholders corner, which is a play on speakers corner in Hyde Park, which I've never actually attended, but apparently that's a thing. We're introducing the art gallery as well, so that's giving communities a chance to put their artwork forward, and it's there's photography, there's visual art, there's a poetry converge to tell the stories about things that are shaping our sector today as well. But the art gallery is also going to be home for 2 days to several exhibitors who are showcasing their work within communities. So we've got Homewards, the Royal Foundation, and we've got Women of Newport, Magenta Living and Tyne Housing, and just to name a few. I'll not give it all away, otherwise people just won't come, because I might as well just tell you everything. But there's just loads going on, and it's a chance just to really celebrate each other, celebrate the sector, and have fun while you're learning as well, because I think previously conferences can be a little bit stale. Yeah, so I don't know if I've just gone off on a tangent, Matt, but that's how the program's put together. The exhibition is put together by a team of powerhouses, and I don't know how they do it, but they do a very good job.
This is it, and I think this is maybe the big change that we've seen is that level of collaboration. And Simon, I know you'll have noticed it from the National Housing Federation side as well. That acknowledgement that actually it is its members and its housing professionals and its tenants that are dictating the programme, rather than previously when maybe it was ideas. I found when I was first doing the roundtable all those years ago, I'd bring forward suggestions of topics and we might discuss them, and great. When it's other people and it's professionals dictating the agenda and what we're going to be discussing, etc., you suddenly find not just his engagement better, but actually the programme as a whole just looks better more broadly. In terms of some of the other points that we'd had come through before we move it up. So in terms of what you're looking forward to most, so we've got, Simon, I guess we'll come back to you just there in terms of, because I think Alex has highlighted some of the new stuff that we've got, but I want to kind of ask her in some detail on some of those in a minute. But from your experience last year, Simon, what are you looking forward to, I guess, most this year, not just from your experience of last year, but also just on the programme and everything you've got coming up through 2025? Alert Call return as one of the keynote sponsors for the Social Housing Roundtable in 2025 into 2026, and we're delighted to have them back. Alert Call help as many people as possible feel safe, connected and informed by combining ingenious technology and award-winning human contact. As you can see from this touchscreen I've got with me, Alert Call's digital engagement solution helps social landlords proactively know their customers and properties by putting a portable touchscreen in every home, offering a daily property check through the optional OK Each Day service, plus repairs reporting, tenant surveys and much more. They also provide Beyond Warden Call, an easier, simpler and lower cost wireless warden call solution with video door entry, dispersed telecare and smoke alarms. Alert Call work with over 60 housing providers across the UK to enhance two-way engagement between customers and their landlords. In 2022, Alert Call won the Queen's Award for Enterprise and Innovation, and in 2023, Alert Call won Housing Supplier of the Year. We're delighted to have them back with us throughout the course of this year, and please do go check them out on social media and LinkedIn to find out more. Thank you very much, Alert Call, for sponsoring us again.
I mean, I would say this, wouldn't I, given my role, but it is, I was looking through the programme just the other day and thinking, well, this is going to be really difficult because I'm going to have to be in a lot of different places all at the same time. So there's so much interesting content, not just in if you think about Housing in Focus, talking about that, we've got the main plenaries, but also I think there's lots of interesting things going on around that as well. I mean, there's going to be a big political set piece. There always is at the conference. We'll all be sort of very interested in that and some of the messaging that might come through on that. I think, we've got a really good panel on day one if you're a bit of a, politics geek. We've got Rory Stewart, the writer and broadcaster Rory Stewart, is going to be talking about the political landscape with Ruth Curtis from the Resolution Foundation, who are very sort of heavy-hitting think tank and influencers, and Kate and Gavin will both be on that stage, chaired by Kirsty Walk, who you'll probably know from Newsnight. I think, that's going to be really interesting. In fact, my wife was just saying to me she's a bit of a Rory Stewart fangirl, and she was trying to persuade me that it would be a good idea for her to come along to the conference, but I was telling her she'd be a distraction, so she couldn't come. But yes, so that's going to be really good. We got some interesting sessions on devolution, which is one of those big areas of uncertainty, I think, across the sector. I mean, more power and influence is being devolved to local level. There's lots of housing partnerships being set up at those sort of combined authority level. We're all learning from that. So there'll be some interesting sessions around devolution. I'm chairing the session that I'm chairing as a breakout is a session on skills, which I'm going to be talking to Ellie Holt, who's currently president of the CIH, and she's obviously been highlighting the importance of skills as part of her presidential campaign. So we'll be talking to Ellie and some other interesting panelists about that, and how, Alex talked about delivery. I think, we're all talking about delivery, but, there's no way that the sector's going to deliver the things that we want to deliver without sorting out this issue around getting people with the right skills into the right jobs. And then, some of the things I'm looking at, which I think are quite fascinating, are some of those sort of in-conversation sessions that you've got on the side. It's like there's going to be a really interesting one with Doreen Lawrence, picking up, on some of those really important issues around equality and diversity. And there's some sessions on housing in focus and in housing in practice around that incredibly important work that a lot of housing practitioners do, working with refugees, for example. And obviously those organisations are under a lot of pressure at the moment. And it's a stressful area for them to work in. I think it's really important to hear from them and hear about how we as the whole housing sector can support some of those organisations and individuals doing that critically important work. So it's just a sort of snapshot of some of the things, Matt, that I've been looking at.
Fantastic. And Alex, I mean, I know obviously there's a number of things that are new this year as well, but in terms of, I guess, what you're looking forward to, are they similar to Simon? I mean, I'm definitely going to be attending the session on staffing management, etc., with my recruitment hat on, but I think the plethora of sessions across the 2 days is just huge to try and, as Simon said, you almost want to copy yourself and have multiple versions because it's difficult to get to it all, but that's the joy of it.
Was that question what am I looking forward to?
Yeah, in a very long-winded way. I rambled. Apologies.
I'm looking forward to it going well. That's what I'm looking forward to. No, do you know what? I would feel bad even picking things that I'm looking forward to the most. And I know I keep going back to it, but I think one of our proudest points from an in practice perspective is that we've got over 30 tenants this year on the programme. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from the tenants. And we've got tenants who otherwise haven't spoken before. Now, I know obviously there's a lot of the time you will have involved tenants, which is absolutely fabulous. We need involved tenants, but sometimes some tenants don't know how to get involved, or they don't know who it is to get in touch with, and they want to because they have a story to tell. And I feel this year we have some people who we haven't heard from before, who have a story to tell and who have advice on how services should be run. But I'm looking forward to going along to those tenant sessions. We do also have, just on the back of what Simon said, a panel discussion with Fuad Mohammed from Ashley Community Housing, and Sam Lister from CIH, and Lucy Carmichael from Mears about positive housing pathways for migrants as well, which should be an excellent 45 minutes because Fuad Mohammed has a great story to tell about his life as a refugee and coming into this country. So yeah, I'm not going to pick particular sessions because it's not fair because they're all brilliant. But what I will say is there's a lot of very cool stuff going on in artificial intelligence that is going to make jobs better, going to make outcomes better. I'm looking forward to the whole thing, to be honest.
I think
the other thing, Matt, just sort of jumping in as well, actually. I mean, I know we're talking about content here and how much amazing content there is across the event, and of course there is. But ultimately, the fantastic thing about these sorts of events is the amount of people you bump into. I think I was talking to you before when we were chatting before this. At the end of every day, I've kind of lost my voice from speaking to so many people. But I think that whole thing that we've tried to create, which is the badge line is by the sector for the sector, but it is the whole sector coming together under one roof. So I think that connection, making those, I don't want to use that dreaded word networking, because I think when some people kind of hear the word or networking, that sounds very forced, but actually it's much more about that sort of making connections with people, which I think is one of the most enjoyable things about a conference like this.
And that was exactly the point I was going to highlight, Simon. I think so much of it for me last year was just being able to walk around and people that you've probably, I mean, for me, certainly through the roundtable, I see so many people through Zoom all year round. You know, we do 50 sessions of these between each summit every year. And I get to something like, oh, you're Matt. I'm like, I know your face. Let's chat. Who are you? You know, and it's one of those, you know, and you get to rebuild those connections that I think sometimes the world of remote working has taken away from us a bit. We don't meet in person as much. We don't have as much, in person connection. And by going something like the summit, by meeting in these conferences, by having these conversations, you know, I'm doing 2 sessions on the Tuesday. One is from Alertical on undiscovered tenant deaths, and then a couple of hours later, I'm chairing a session on the competency and conduct standard and what it means for housing officers. It's so polarizing in terms of in the best possible way in terms of conversations and things like that. There's literally something for everybody, but I think you get just as much value out of talking to other professionals, reconnecting, re-networking, and trying to break down some of those barriers where the best way the housing sector works together is when it collaborates and shares best practice, and having the chance to do that in a space like this is amazing. I'm going to open up the floor to see if we've got any questions from any of our attendees. If you want to, you can either feel free to put something in the chat and we'll bring you in. You can wave at me. You can stick your hand up as Lade's just done, which is amazing because I'm bringing you in now. However you'd like to connect, let me know and we'll bring you in to ask some questions of our panel. But Lade, do please come in and join us.
Hi everyone, so sorry I can't put my camera on, but I was just wondering, when people talk about housing, a lot of the conversation is around the bricks and mortar. Not much is spoken around homelessness, housing options, allocations, the waiting list, and so much more, which is behind, and mainly from the local authority perspective. And I just wonder why. I have, Matthew, know me, I've been on this platform several times, and I cannot recollect, except I've missed it, where if you've had a session on homelessness, on assessment, the complexities that staff in homelessness are going through, the allocation, housing allocation, maintaining the register, all of that end is an area that's not really spoken about. But surely this is part of housing as well. I'll throw that open and I'd like to hear from colleagues on the platform.
Alex, are there sessions running? I can't.
Yeah. A lot of the homelessness content will fall under the housing management and engagement session. So we have an end in homelessness panel, which is a congregation of charities talking about how they work with housing sector providers. But I hear what you're saying, and that there's a lot there that needs to be covered. I think the challenge that we come up against with things like the summit is that it's 2 days worth, and we're trying to fit everything in. Where I think homelessness in itself could really have its own conference, to be honest. Simon, do you want to come in from an NHF perspective on how maybe we could do something like this, I guess?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's because, Lada, I mean, you make, a very good point. I think, and obviously we want local authorities to, local authorities do have a presence, obviously, at the summit because unlike the NHF, the CIH does have kind of local authority members, and a lot of these things, the responsibilities do, particularly allocations and those things, they do sit with the local authorities rather than with our members. I think the really important thing is to try and foster, and we are looking obviously to encourage local authorities to come to and have a presence at the event, but trying to foster that relationship and collaboration between housing associations and local authorities, I think is really important, particularly when it comes to tackling homelessness. And I think, but there were also those, who say, well, actually, whilst sitting underneath homelessness are all sorts of really complex issues that you've just touched the surface of, Lade, which, is all about everything from nominations, allocations, temporary housing. It's about move on accommodation. It's about mental health support, all of those things. So supportive housing fits into tackling homelessness as well. And we'll be putting a focus on supported housing. But ultimately, ultimately, how do we tackle homelessness? We tackle homelessness by building more social home, right? And that, that is a huge focus of the event as well.
It certainly is, and I know it rings through a lot of the programs regarding challenges with building and everything that comes with it. I think, Ladi, absolutely, like I say, I know you've come to the round table before, and you've been here for a number of them. My challenge often has been it's finding somebody who has a solution, and I think often is the challenge. It's the challenge you have is that I'd love to welcome speakers to a platform who can come and go, hey, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this. I've not had those people approach me yet. And if you know people, or if there are people who think you could bring forth a conversation like, we'd love to hear it. I think it was a couple of years ago when the term, what's the term I'm thinking of? It'll come to me in just a moment. The cost of living crisis first appeared. So I said, Matt, you need to do a session on the cost of living crisis. I said, well, I can definitely bring one to the table when someone's got a solution for it. I don't just want this to be a place where we come and go, it's awful. It's okay, what are the solutions? What are we doing to move forward? And I don't know if that rings true for you, Lade.
It certainly does. It does. For me, what I'm thinking of is a platform like this where different aspects are discussed, and we get to hear other people's perspectives. So I work with a local authority. Somebody else is working in another local authority, and they're looking at, okay, how best do they manage their front end? How do they manage their triaging? How do they work with people who are vulnerable? How do they support? So, for example, where I work, we have a particularly great project that I know some other local authorities are looking into adopting it, and that's the housing intervention program. So we work with housing association that have stock in the borough, and we help to intervene where there's anyone who is at risk of losing their tenancy. I mean, there's such good work that is being done that it's not about discussing the problems, it's about looking at what are the good practices you have in your neck of the wood, and how best can we, how best can it be adopted. And it's also about working with the housing association, work with neighborhood mental health teams. There is a vast array of topics to be covered. And I think it'll be great for us to link up and, just moving forward for you to consider that, because this is social housing. Social housing roundtable is also about homelessness as well.
It absolutely is, and definitely something to consider. So thank you very, very much. I can see a point in the chat made from Brian. Getting to hear the voice of tenants is very important, and it's great to hear so many speakers will be tenants who have the lived experience. Do you think there's enough encouragement from landlords to get tenants involved and engaged at events like this? And I guess, Alex, maybe this is more aimed slightly yourself, but Simon, I'd love your thoughts. In terms of how easy is it? Because you look at the tools we've got, you look at the access we've got, you look at your members, which are often housing providers themselves, and you look at social media, which isn't always something like LinkedIn isn't directed necessarily towards tenants, it's towards people who work in the businesses of social housing themselves. How easy has it been, Alex, for you to speak with tenants, to engage with tenants, and how accessible do you think landlords have been to opening up those conversations?
It's not easy. I think I'm lucky in the respect, having worked in the sector for, I think it's coming up 7 or 8 years. I'm kind of fortunate to have connections who can then reach out to tenants and give them this opportunity. Caritas Charles, for example, at TPAS, other people, Alison Inman, who I know who can get involved. And that's usually my way of doing it, is people who I know are engaged with tenants. I do frequently get in touch with landlords to ask this, but it's not easy. I can't say any of 2 ways about it. So I think, and I mentioned it earlier, that the best thing that we have and what we rely on is our membership base, and we have tenant members as well, which is great, and we're seeing more people sign up who are tenants to become CIH members as well, who either want to get a qualification, or I think who just want to get a bit more information about housing services generally. So that's helpful for me. But one of the biggest challenges I face is getting in touch with a landlord to send a tenant. It is difficult, and I don't have the answer as to why. I'm sure people can probably make their own assumptions, but it's definitely a minefield that I'm willing to continue to keep walking until we get to a point where there's a good balance between professionals and tenants at these things.
I think just to add, to what Alex is saying. I think I mean getting the balance right is right, and the thing we need to avoid and we're very conscious of is not just sticking a token tenant on kind of various panels. We have to remember, and we have to that tenants have expertise in their own right, and have a lot of tenants, particularly if they're tenant board members or involved in tenant scrutiny panels, or tenants might themselves have a professional background that allows them to have a particular insight. And I think the real challenge with us is getting out there and getting that kind of information base, that knowledge base of what tenants out there, what particular specialist skills and knowledge that they have, so we can kind of put them into sort of panels kind of across the piece, as I say, without just adopting some sort of tokenistic approach saying, oh, every panel has to have a tenant, because I think that's just I think maybe in the past sometimes in a slightly sort of patronizing view on that, and not enough recognition of some of that real expertise that tenants can bring to some of these debates.
I agree with you completely, and it's been, I think it's been called out before and said, well, you're, so and so's only there because exactly you mentioned it's been tokenistic, and actually, I think you see more and more now that there's such expertise out there. It's about knowing who to go to, and certainly, I've spoken to Alex about people who've spoken at the roundtable. We've had sessions. We're trying to do what we can, and the roundtable's only got the tenants it's got because those who've attended have actually found it useful, and therefore have invited other tenants along because of their own networking group. So it's great to see that we've been able to do that, but it's constantly an evolving process, and it's always about going, how do we find more groups out there? And I can see a couple have been mentioned in the group that Alex has said would love to chase up with them and find out more. So that's wonderful to hear. Jan, I could see you had your hand up. Do please come in.
Hi. Yes, as always, I'm the oldest one in the room, and having been a tenant and a chief officer in London for 30 years, I was the only chief officer in London who actually living on a council estate. Got some experience of the challenges, and when I became the interim managing director of a subsidiary of a national housing association, when I suggested that I should take my local tenants reps with me to Harrogate, it was I think year before Harrogate finished the housing conference there, most chief officers in the organisation threw their hands up in horror. And the classic situation really is where senior officers still, I think, have a stigma about tenants, because I in fact allocated, it cost me 10 grand, because not only are you sending a tenant for in which case I took them for the 3 days, but we had to obviously provide accommodation, fares and so on, and it was a serious amount of money. But in my view, it was worth it, because up until that point, they, as vociferous and dedicated resident reps, only knew the area in which they lived in. They didn't realise just how large an organisation housing actually was. And I think that has a major role. I think the role of the NHF and the CIH, if I could suggest, colleagues, perhaps is to say to social landlords that you would provide some form of not training, but some opportunity for residents reps to have a conversation with the landlords and NatFed and CIH about what's involved in going, because I think it's really important. It really is important. There's no point keep talking about it. It's really important to actually do it. I'd just throw in, when I suggested that a residents rep become a member of my executive team, that particular subsidiary, there were serious conversations about how tenants should or shouldn't behave, and in the end, it worked. In my view, it worked out very well. And I just think residents have a contribution to make, and we should be laying the groundwork to enable them to do it, rather than, as Simon said, the token residents person who presumably will be in the upstairs group, as opposed to the downstairs. Those of us in Housing Focus will be downstairs. I don't know whether it's going to be the same layout this year, but I really think it's important. But I think both organisations have a role to promote it specifically, perhaps for next year.
I think, Alex, I mean, it's downstairs where there's 33 tenants we've got speaking, is in the downstairs free to attend CIH area. If you're a CIH member, absolutely, we've got a plethora upstairs, which is wonderful. But Alex, I mean, in terms of any thoughts there, in terms of what more, I guess, it's a challenge though, because sometimes all you can do is ask. and you can go, look, we're looking for tenant speakers. They are your tenants. You know your tenants. Who do you think would be providing insight on X, Y, Z? And if you get nothing back, that's the challenge, isn't it? Case Management Solution Group, or CMSG, are the home of React, the UK's #1 case management system for ASB and community safety. We are delighted to have them as one of our key sponsors for Social Housing Roundtable 2025 into 2026. And with the ASB app now fully integrated to the platform, it allows residents to record, monitor and report issues directly to their case office in live time. What's not to love? CMSG are bringing simplicity back to case management, and I cannot recommend them enough and thank them for all of their support through this period and through the rest of the year. Thank you, CMSG, and do please go check them out on social media and on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess there's something around maybe, you know, if there were a campaign we could maybe do, which I'm looking at anyway. I'd like to do a diversity campaign for speakers, a campaign around getting more tenants involved. But again, you're only going to get the people or the organisations that want to put people forward. So it's just difficult. But if nothing else, this year is huge progress compared to last year in terms of the amount of tenants that have engaged in the programme and are coming along.
Simon, anything you'd like to add?
No, I think it's an important point that Jan made, actually, about thinking about. I mean, actually going out and finding good speakers, whether it's tenant speakers or whether it's any other kind of speaker, is a perennial problem for our events teams. I don't think tenant speakers are any different from others, kind of in that respect. And we need to, properly think about how we engage our members on that. But that whole idea about sort of proactively. Our members to sort of proactively encourage tenants to kind of learn a bit more about the event and what they can do is an interesting one, and we'll have a think about that. I mean, we're looking at doing things slightly differently next year, so we have less of that kind of upstairs downstairs kind of barrier that you have in the event, which is almost inevitable because of the way the finances are set up and other things. But we know that's an issue, and we want to sort of break down that divide as well. So we'll look at that in that context as well.
The best part about that as well is that this year it's not even upstairs downstairs, it's along the corridor. We've got along the corridor and along that way. I don't want to detract as well though from all of the absolutely incredible housing professionals who've got speaking this year, because I've had some insane conversations with people doing absolutely incredible work. Like you say, from call centre staff through to your housing officers, your resident support leads, everybody that's coming along to tell a story are just phenomenal. And yeah, don't want to take away from them as well.
Absolutely, and we've the plethora trying to coordinate that many speakers at one event. I mean, like I say, we have 1 or 2 speakers every week for this platform, and the amount of people we have that might drop out or move stuff, whatever it'll be, when they drop out on a day or a week before or something like Summit, trying to move things around is incredibly difficult and challenging. And I can see in the group there, Kim's mentioned we have a steering group, and half of those that are on it have had lived experience of rough sleeping and homelessness. It's vital you steer your organisation in the direction of those that are using the service, which you can absolutely see through the collaboration that's going on here is happening. And Chris has said it shouldn't be that hard. There's a lot of knowledge out there. Don't see your eyes problems. But again, it's having it directed towards you. Helen, I can see, or I think you've got your hand up, Helen, I think. So if you want to come in.
Yeah, I want to say 2 things. It'll be my first, well, I came to the Housing Summit last year, but it'll be my first summit as a resident speaker. Terrified, but still. And after the experience of upstairs downstairs last year, me and my colleague have actually got paid tickets so we can go anywhere and listen to anybody.
Fantastic. I really hope you're looking forward to it. It's the programme this year is wonderful. So that's wonderful, and the very best of luck, Helen. I'm sure you'll be fantastic. Alex, Simon, obviously the conversation today was around that kind of joining forces to boost community and collaboration. There's a point made briefly earlier by Claire, I think, around kind of regional events as well. That this obviously isn't the only event that the CIH and NatFed run. In terms of those ways that the CIH and NatFed get involved in their communities, then in terms of trying to get those plethora of voices come about, how have how have you seen, I guess, the effects of last year's summit had an effect on this year's summit? So with the additional kind of touching base of community, with the additional maybe groups that you've worked in and the additional, I guess, events you've run through the course of the year, have you heard more people kind of getting excited for the summit, talking about the summit, talked about maybe the benefits they got from last year's kind of collaboration? Have you heard any stories around that at all? I don't mind who wants to dive in first.
Simon, do you want to? Because there's probably, I've got like all of the feedback that we get anyway through the events, but I'm just wondering from NHF membership perspective, what you've heard.
Well, we've definitely had a lot of very vocal members talking about how much they enjoyed the summit. But the thing almost all of them focused in on in terms of saying why they enjoyed the summit so much. They said it was that sense of the whole sector coming together under one roof. That was the thing that most people that talk to me about it have kind of highlighted. And I think, it's that. And of course, for some of the larger events, you have brilliant, we have brilliant content, and brilliant content is kind of at the heart of it. But as I said at the beginning, one of the main reasons people go to these events is to make connections across the board. And I think so. We don't do. I mean, one of the main differences between the NHF and the CIH is the CIH is a national organisation, as in UK, or even international actually, whereas we're just for England. So Alex is doing regional events, but also, as she said, she's doing events in Scotland and other things. So she's best placed to talk about how the summit, the way the summit operates, might kind of impact on those. Whereas we do, we do a sort of broad stream of national conferences. Because we were fairly worried. We have a very large finance conference in Liverpool in March. It's very well attended, and we did wonder whether the summit would detract from that, in that people would go to that and not to the finance conference. Actually, it seems like the summit has a bit of a halo effect on the finance conference, in that equally we try and have that combination of practitioner stuff and strategic stuff. So I would hope that the way in which we do things at the summit will start to translate more into some of the other events that we do.
We did have that concern as well. We did think once the summit hits, our regional conference is going to take a bit of a hit, especially sort of southeast Brighton, southwest, a bit more further down the country. But actually they didn't. I mean, Brighton last year was probably the best it's been attended, because you still have regional challenges that we try. Well, obviously the summit is made, it's for the whole country. I mean, we've got Scotland, Ireland, Wales at the summit as well, and we have as much from our regional groups, as much representation in terms of the challenges you're facing in the northeast compared down to the southwest, that we try to blend into the summit. But regional conferences are still really well attended because they're zoned right in on the housing professionals of that area and what they're facing, because things look hugely different up here in the northeast to what they do in Brighton in terms of homelessness, child poverty, all those different issues that we have. So they're still integral, and I don't think they're ever going to go anywhere. But the summit, like Simon said, I think it's the feel of the place as well. You're not just going and being sold to. You're not just being given a new fire door. No offense, Jan, I know we need fire doors, but that sort of thing. You're there to have conversations and build relationships, and that's how it feels from the moment you walk through the door. So yeah.
And in terms of those collaboration pieces, Alex, I'll just double down that one for a moment. You mentioned obviously the learning areas and things like that. Are there any other kind of bits going on in or around the summit that are designed purely for collaboration, either before or after the event?
You mean sort of stuff that's going on the exhibition floor?
Yeah, exhibition floor, or just more broadly around it, in terms of its sole focus being almost more collaboration rather than maybe learning from a panel. I guess beyond just the panels, I guess I'm inquiring about.
Yeah. So I mean, to start with, what we've decided to do this year in the theatres is not just have people come and do presentations. They're going to be audience and panel Q&As basically for the full 45 minutes. It's going to be delegates getting involved. Delegates are basically the speakers this year as much as the people on stage. But in the centre of everything, obviously, we've got all of the theatres from the outside. We've got the stakeholders corner as well. So this is quite a dynamic platform, really, and it's to allow organisations to come and share their latest research. So we've got people like Centre for Age and Better, TPAS, Crisis. We've got Stop Social Housing Stigma, Domestic Abuse Housing Alliance, organisations like that who've got a new piece of research that they want to launch, and they're coming to do it this year at the summit. And we've got the Fringe Forum as well this year. So we've got Homes for Kathy, End Furniture Poverty, Communities That Work, all doing bits and bobs on the Fringe as well. And there's some stuff on there in the private rented sector as well, which we've got this year, which is new. So it's an exhibition floor full of content in various different places. And like I said, the art gallery, poetry corner, everything that's all there. And obviously we do have our exhibitors, because without exhibitors, we wouldn't have a conference. But there's loads going on. It's not just your panel discussions. It's all open for getting involved in as well. It's all collaborative stuff if you're a delegate.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we're very keen to avoid, Matt, is for the event to just become a trade fair. So even though we do have, obviously we have, sponsors and exhibitors, all of whom are kind of quite curated, and, they're all partners in delivering the housing that we need. What we wanted to do is, just as Alex said, is create a space where things are kind of much more kind of integrated, and there's loads of content down there in the exhibition and everything else, I think. But we will put clear boundaries around that. It's not going to end up being like a massive trade fair with a bit of a conference attached to it. That's absolutely not the USP or the vision of the event.
And I think you felt that last year. I think anybody who went or who attended or who's maybe heard feedback, that was one of the big changes that I found, was rather than kind of go in and immediately go, right, well, how do I get to the stages? Where are the stages? I have to, walk past people who are trying to give me away a stress ball or whatever it will be. I think it's very different now in terms of that feel of actually everyone who was exhibiting there felt like a part of the actual conference itself as well, because they themselves were specialists in housing and understood some of the challenges and wanted to converse more. Sarah was just put in the chat there that Agile Homes helped co-create the Prisoners Building Homes programme with HMPPS and Ministry of Justice. This is now being expanded to hopefully build 35,000 homes using prison workshops and prisoners released on temporary licence. The skills development and rehabilitation aspects are phenomenal, and I'd ask you to engage with them. And then previously to that, you could see that Kim had mentioned they're holding an event on the 5th of September about the Homeless Health Seminar at our setting in Bromley. It's about partnership and collaboration, and about Health Hub that runs 5 days a week. The reason I'm highlighting those two is because I think maybe what's changed quite significantly over maybe time has been that move away from, as Alex mentioned, that kind of panel, sit there, learn, walk away, to how do we all collaborate with each other to really take something away. Sorry, Alex, I can see you waving. Please do come in. You're on mute. Let's unmute you. That's all right.
Oh God, we've got Prisoners Building Homes there this year with I think it's Emily Spurrell, the Police and Crime Commissioner for Merseyside, coming to speak with Debantu about the Prisoners Building Homes programme. So that's interesting. I was just going to thank everybody in the chat for all of this, because I'm going to be in touch with everyone. Everything that I've been saying, because it's really, really useful.
And it's events like this, it's events like the summit, it's events like anything else that shape next year's programme. And I think this is one of the things, I think Simon, Alex, you'll probably be able to testify to, is that without all the people engaging and giving feedback and talking, well, we'd like to hear more about this, or I'd love to speak on this, or X, Y, Z, next year's programme doesn't happen, because it has to be different. You can't just rinse and repeat every year. And so I guess, have there been any kind of conversations that have come out of last year that, you look at what's on the programme this year going, actually, you know what, that probably wouldn't have been on the programme 12 months ago, but because someone's come to us and challenged us or asked about it or whatever it is there anything that's, I don't know, comes to mind going, well, that has come about simply because of feedback or because people have engaged with last year's summit? Appreciate I'm putting you on the spot a little bit on that one, but I just figured I'd ask. Go on, Simon, I'll let you dive in.
I mean, that does happen. I mean, Alex is much better qualified to talk about this than I am. But I think, when you're an event producer, you're constantly having to try and balance, this thing about, a subject that somebody is very passionate about and kind of brought to the table, and actually a subject that delegates will go along and, will actually go along kind of and attend. And it's sort of getting, and I think, that art of, this is the thing we were talking about how the program of of the event being very much driven by our advisory panels and groups and reach, the outreach that Alex does and that our producers do is actually, so, every year you're trying to curate a conference which is very much in touch as a litmus paper really of where the sector is at the moment, and the things that the sector is focusing on will always change and shift. You're going to as everybody well knows, the sector's been very focused on investing in existing stock over recent years, and the importance of all of that. But you can see potentially, can't you, with very large AHP that we've got and the kind of government priorities that development and growth will start to come back as a more sort of as a bigger issue for events kind of going forward. So as I say, it does shift over time, and it is up to Alex and the other producers to really have their finger on the pulse and get a sense of where the sector is on these things.
Yeah, I mean, it's a team effort between everybody that works across the sector. It's not just me and the producers. It's the policy team, it's our members, it's everyone that'll tell us. I mean, last year, a lot of the feedback was excellent on our supported housing content that we had. And on the build up to this year, we've had feedback that it's not as good this year. It's there. It's just, there's not as much of it. Again, I guess it's a bit like homelessness, but it's a balancing act, because honestly, if I could fit everything in, the conference would be 6 weeks long. So it's just trying to prioritize the big issues and making sure that our members are being reflected in the content. And I'm hopeful that that's what we've managed. Sorry, the window cleaner just turned up and just smashed the window in nearly. I was like, but yeah, so it's hopefully it's reflective of what we're seeing in the sector.
And I think it is. And I'm going to just pass to you both for final comment. We've got about 2 minutes left. So I know there's very, very few tickets left. I don't know if it's actually quite sold out yet. I know last year it did sell out. I know we're down to the last few, kind of both for the NatFed and for the CIH, the practice and the focus side. In terms of why people should attend, and I guess, what we're looking forward for from both this year and next, are there any kind of final things you'd like to share? Simon, I'll come to yourself first. Reasons to attend, why to get involved if you're not going this year for next year, all that wonderful stuff on collaboration.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've covered, the sort of quality of the content and the whole sort of vibe of the event, in a sense, around people attending. But I think, really, let's finish on a really critical point here, which is that, we say this in the taglines for the event. It is the main event, which is by the sector for the sector, which is that, it is not only does the sector have complete input into the program or whatever, but whatever financial gain that the CIH and the NHF make from the event as well gets recycled back into the work that we do for the sector. So it's ours. It's that sense of ownership, really. We want the whole social housing sector to own the summit and take ownership of the summit.
Couldn't agree more. And Alex, anything from yourself?
Some lovely comments in here today. It's making us want to cry. I just want to answer a question first. So Amy mentioned about EDI discussions. There's quite a few going on. I'm going to just put the programme into this chat just so you can link back through to it. But there's plenty of EDI stuff going on. And we set ourselves targets every year to hit at least 20% Black ethnic minority speakers. And obviously we have a 50-50 split female-male, which we've achieved this year. And we make sure that we have representation from the LGBTQ community as well. So in terms of diversity, the programme is pretty strong this year, and there's a chance to talk about it as well. There's one session in particular that is celebrating EDI in housing. I think it's at the end of day one, just before the networking event kicks off. So get along to that. Callum Chalmers, our Chair of Scotland, is in that, and he's brilliant. But yeah, I mean, there's just loads going on, and I think I'm kind of going to go with the stance I said from the start: go and have fun while you learn, and just celebrate yourselves. Like, the summit is for you as members, and as for housing professionals to go and to come away with something tangible, and it's CPD accredited as well. So There you go.
What a lovely way to end. Alex, Simon, thank you so much for coming on today. I appreciate, as I say, this was thrown on you both a fairly last minute. So thank you so much for joining, sharing your insights, sharing your thoughts. Really looking forward to the summit. Do feel free to come along and say hello to myself, Alex, Simon next week. We'd love to see you there. But for now, the very best of luck to the CIH and the NatFed with what looks to be a phenomenal conference, and looking forward to seeing you all next week. Thanks all.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.